1,000 years ago, a group of people wrote a book that could predict solar eclipses centuries into the future. Accurately, to within minutes. They had no telescopes, no computers, no satellites, no instruments of any kind, just their eyes and generations of obsessive watching wrapped inside a story about gods performing on a stage made of stars. That book still exists, and in 2025, a study published in the journal Science Advances confirmed it works. But they were not alone. Because across the ancient world, cultures that never spoke to each other, separated by oceans and mountains and thousands of years, all looked up at the same sky and arrived at something that should not have been possible. This is the story of what ancient humans thought the stars were, and why some of their answers are more accurate than anything they had any right to produce. Step outside on a clear night and look up. What you are looking at are suns, not decorations, not dots painted on a ceiling. Actual suns, most of them larger than our own, burning millions of miles away, many surrounded by their own planets, some billions of years older than the Earth itself. We know this because of telescopes and satellites and centuries of mathematics. But here's the question nobody thinks to ask. What did people think they were looking at before any of that existed? Not the ancient Greeks, not even the Egyptians. Go back further, before writing, before cities, before agriculture. Back to when a human being sat in the dark on the ground with nothing between them and the sky and looked up and thought, what is that? The answers they arrived at are stranger than you expect, and some of them are more accurate than they have any right to be. Start with the oldest astronomers we have records of, the Babylonians. 6,000 years ago, in the land between two rivers in what is now Iraq, they built towers specifically designed to watch the night sky. Not for defense, not for religion, to watch. They believed the stars were messages written by the gods, a cosmic scroll constantly updating, telling anyone who could read it what was coming. War, famine, the rise and fall of kings. So they watched every night for generations, and they wrote everything down on clay tablets. What they recorded was remarkable. They tracked the sun, the moon, Mercury, and Venus. They calculated the length of a solar year. And they predicted eclipses correctly, without a single instrument beyond their own eyes and the records of their ancestors. Think about what predicting an eclipse actually requires. You need to understand the precise orbital relationship between the Earth, the moon, and the sun. You need decades of observation. You need mathematics. The Babylonians did all of this while believing the stars were gods sending them messages. Their data was so accurate that modern astronomers still reference it today. Now go to Egypt. To the Egyptians, the stars were not distant suns. They were the souls of dead pharaohs ascending after death to join Osiris, the god of the afterlife, among the stars. The constellation Orion represented Osiris. The bright star Sirius represented Isis. And when they built the pyramids at Giza, they oriented all three to align with Orion's belt. 3 structures, each one pointing to a specific star, built 4,500 years ago. The alignment is precise enough that modern astronomers confirmed it by working backward through historical star position data. They were not just building tombs, they were building a map of the sky on the Earth. Now go to Mesoamerica. The Maya believed the Milky Way was the world tree, a cosmic axis connecting the underworld beneath your feet, the human world you live in, and the divine realm above. Beautiful mythology. But they were also doing something else entirely. They created a book called the Dresden Codex, written almost 1,000 years ago on bark paper. Inside, tables predicting solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, and the complete cycle of Venus, accurate to within minutes over centuries of future time. The 2025 Science Advances study found they used overlapping astronomical cycles that self-corrected their predictions across generations. No telescopes, no computers, just obsessive, meticulous, generational watching of the sky, wrapped inside a story about gods on a cosmic stage. Now go to ancient India. The Vedas, written before 1500 BCE, described the sky not as a backdrop but as a living record of time itself. The ancient sages called rishis spent their lives mapping the sky into 27 lunar mansions called nakshatras, each corresponding to where the moon rests during each night of its cycle. Then, in 499 AD, came Aryabhata. He calculated the Earth's rotation. He calculated the length of a solar year at 365.358 days, extraordinarily close to what we use today. He calculated pi as 3.1416, accurate to 4 decimal places, over 1,000 years before European mathematicians arrived at the same number. According to researchers of the history of mathematics, no source before the 18th century produced more accurate astronomical constants, and the Vedas described cosmic time in cycles measured in billions of years, the kind of timescales that Western science did not arrive at until the 20th century. Now go to Australia and pay attention, because this is the one that stops astronomers cold. The Aboriginal Australians have been observing the sky for at least 65,000 years. Some researchers consider them the world's first astronomers. Some elders can name almost every one of the 3,000 stars visible to the naked eye. They used the sky to navigate, to mark seasons, to know when to plant and when to move. Their astronomical knowledge was not decoration. It was survival technology. But there is one story in particular. Across different Aboriginal groups throughout the continent, the Pleiades star cluster is called the Seven Sisters. The story describes 7 sisters being chased across the sky by a hunter. In ancient Greek mythology, the Pleiades are also called the Seven Sisters, also being chased by Orion. 2 cultures, 0 contact, the exact same story. Nobody has explained why. But here's the part that is genuinely difficult to dismiss. Look at the Pleiades tonight with the naked eye. Count the stars. You will see 6, not 7. 6. One has faded beyond easy visibility. Most people never notice because they do not know to look for a 7th. So why do both Aboriginal Australians and ancient Greeks insist there are 7? Because 100,000 years ago, there were 7 clearly visible stars in the Pleiades. One of them has since dimmed beyond naked eye visibility as it moved away from us through space. The Aboriginal oral tradition does not just describe the Pleiades. It accurately describes a sky that last existed 100,000 years ago. Before agriculture. Before language as we understand it, before modern humans had left Africa. Their memory of 7 sisters is not mythology dressing up 6 stars. It is an accurate record of a sky that no longer exists. Now step back and look at what just happened. Every culture we just visited arrived at accurate astronomical data. The Babylonians predicted eclipses correctly with no instruments. The Egyptians aligned monuments to within fractions of a degree. The Maya predicted Venus cycles centuries ahead and confirmed by modern science. The ancient Indians produced astronomical constants not bettered for 1,000 years. The Aboriginal Australians preserved a memory of a star that faded before recorded history began. And every single one of them believed something completely different about what the stars actually were. Gods. Souls. A cosmic stage. A record of time. Ancestors. All wrong by our current understanding of what stars physically are. And all right, in the data they produced. So here is the real question. How? The standard answer is time. Watch the same sky every night for 1,000 years and the patterns emerge. And that is true. It explains the Babylonians. It explains the Maya. But it does not explain the 7 sisters. No amount of watching in a single civilization's lifetime explains a memory that is 100,000 years old. That memory either means human pattern recognition is so universally wired that unconnected cultures independently arrived at the same story when they looked at the same sky. Or it means the knowledge is older than the civilizations we can trace. That before Babylon, before Egypt, before Mesoamerica, there was a common source of sky knowledge that fragmented and survived inside the myths of the cultures that came after. Neither has been proven. Both are more interesting than the version of history where ancient people looked up at the stars and saw nothing but confusion. We gave them myths. They gave us data. We looked at their stories and saw superstition. They looked at the sky and saw a library. Everything they needed to know about time, navigation, agriculture, and the turning of seasons written up there for free for anyone patient enough to look. They did not know what the stars were, but they paid attention to them in a way we have entirely forgotten how to do. And somehow, that was enough.